Okay, so before we talk about Vayikra, today I want to just talk about something that came up. Truma Titzava Vayakel Pekudei, and it does come up several times in Vayikra. This is really a halachic point, but I was thinking about it because it came up in my my daily limud of Yerushalmi, so I figured I'd address it. So there is a principle which the Gemara outlines in several places. The primary sugya in the Bavli is on Shabbat Chavchet, that which is used for a mitzvah and that which is used for the Mishkan and the Mikdash has to be kosher. Min hamutar beficha. And the drasha in some places mashke Yisrael, things that are used for the Mikdash have to be something that can be consumed by the Jewish people. And these are all types of halachic. They're all types of halachic implications, and there's a lot of discussion in poskim about the exact parameters of it. Does it apply to tashmishe kedusha, tashmishe mitzvah? Nafkaminas of that are things like shofar. What about the beged of tzitzit? Where obviously the beged of tzitzit does not need to be kosher. The walls of a sukkah we know don't have to be kosher because of that explicit case in the Mishnayot and Sukkah of the elephant, which makes up the wall of the sukkah. So we know it can't be all mitzvah. And again, the poskim really try to figure out what are the exact parameters. But one of the central places that they weigh in on this is two things in the Mishkan that at first glance really don't seem to be kosher. And therefore they need to defend this. And those are two of the dyes. And the reason I really want to bring it up, because one of them we've talked about a lot this year. One of them is the tola'at shani, right? The dyes that are made from the tola'at shani, which is a worm, presumably. And the other is the chilazon. Right? The chilazon is very possibly not kosher. And the dyes that were used to make the what's it called? Whatever, the tapestries, there's the English word. The tapestries in the Mishkan were dyed with these dyes. So how do you defend it? So again, I'm not going to do this exhaustively, but because, again, since we've been doing, I know your share has, and I know my share has, been doing the sugya in Menachot about Techelet, we should at least address the relevance to Techelet. So what do you say about Techelet? So the first thing that the poskim note is that how you understand this may depend on the machloket between Rashi and the other Rishonim, or for the moment, let's just say Rashi and the Rambam. Because Rashi says that what is Techelet? Well, what is the chilazon, rather? A fish. Very good. It's a fish. So once it's a fish, the poskim note that one could claim, if you thought that this principle of mutar b'ficha applies to the dye of the techelet, that maybe part of what motivates Rashi is that Rashi thinks it's a fish, and maybe specifically it's a fish that has snapir v'kaskeset, that has fins and scales. That obviously is not a defensible position, according to the Rambam and Rov Rishonim, who think that the chilazon is not a fish. Again, it's not clear Rashi actually means a fish. Maybe it could be fish-like, and then whatever, we'd be back to the same problem. But definitely, according to people who think it means what we assume it means, some sort of snail, and especially if we assume it's the one that we have, the Merx trunculus, it's not kosher. It's a bug. Right? It's a bug. And if that's the case, so then it would be clear that we'd have to come up with a different defense of why it is that Techelet is allowed to be used in the Mishkan.
Why would a non-kosher animal not be allowed to be used for the Mishkan?
Because I just said, the Gemara says, Shabbat Chavchet presents this principle of min mutar beficha. That which makes up the Mishkan or used for mitzvot must be mutar. Mimashke Yisrael must be something that can be eaten by the Jewish people. The basic principle is not in question. The application is. So again, the first possibility is to say that this depends on the Machloket, Rashi, and the Rambam. that if you say it's a fish, so then you could at least entertain the possibility that it is kosher. But if it is, if it's a worm, a snail, so then you have to come up with some other defense. So what other defenses could we come up with? So what do you think? Right? How else could we defend the use?
Say there's a special chilazon exemption in kashrus.
So you could, but that would be right. No, I'm actually surprised that no one actually says that. I'm really quite surprised, but no one actually says that. So I'll give you some of the other defenses. If you look, right, obviously the Radziner deals with this in his Mamar Til Techelet, not surprisingly. But it's dealt with by a lot of other poskim. It's dealt with by the Nod Yehuda. It's dealt with by the Chida. It's dealt with the Chasam Sofer. So he says there are a few possibilities. He says one possibility is maybe the blood of a fish, or maybe in this case even of the worm, are kosher. He says maybe first of all, he said even if the fish is not kosher, maybe their blood is kosher. But he says this won't really work by a sheretz, if that's how you define the chilazon, because there we know that daman kiv saran. Now, for him, he holds like Rashi. If you remember, right, he thought that it was the cuttlefish, and therefore, right, he thought that the cuttlefish is also not kosher. But his defense was, okay, it is a non-kosher fish, but it doesn't matter. Maybe their dam is kosher. Another possibility he gives is that maybe we conceptualize this dam as not really part of this. Really, is why would this be true? He says maybe because it's mifkad. It's not really part of the animal, at least halachically, right? That's one of his possibilities. Now, another possibility that the poskim say is, so I'll read you one second from the Avnei Nezer. I'm not really going to go in order here. So he says, right, he first says, well, maybe this depends on Machlokas Rashi Rambam. So he says, a Chiddush. He says, maybe the Rambam holds against the Tosefta that the chilazon for tzitzit the tchelet for tzitzit needs to be chilazon, but maybe the tchelet for the Mishkan doesn't need to be from the chilazon. It can be from anything, including kala ilan, including from indigo, and therefore it's kosher. And then he pushes it farther, and he says, maybe you'll tell me so that you should make it from indigo. He says, no, maybe what it means, is that it needs to be something that categorically could be made from kosher things, and once you can make it from kosher things, you could make it from non-kosher things as well. And therefore, since it could be made from kala ilan, so then it would be mutter to make it even from the chilazon. Now, this is obviously problematic, because you'd have to explain. First of all, you'd have to go against the Tosefta and say that you're allowed to use indigo for the Mishkan. And second, you need to explain why, just because it could be made with something kosher, it's allowed to be made with something not kosher. One second, my kid's crying. Now another possibility that's raised in the Nod Yehuda is maybe dyes are exceptions to this rule. Why would they be exception? Because you could say that the dyes don't really have mamashut; they're just lechazuta, and therefore it doesn't count. When we say that this rule minamutar braficha, it's only like things that halachically are considered to physically exist. But dyes, once they're dyed in, they aren't considered to exist. So that's another defense that the poskim bring. A third is that these dyes need to be processed. And it could be that once they go through the processing, they're not considered the same entity as they were before, and therefore if they started out non-kosher, they're no longer not kosher. Now that obviously has a lot of implications for using, bug excretions in kashrus purposes. One second. Ezra. Okay, so at least when it comes to the Techelet that's found in the Mishkan, right, that's a summary of the defenses, right? One is to say it's from a fish, and that is a kosher fish. Or two, you say it's from a fish, like the Radzina, but a not kosher fish, but the blood of fish is kosher even if it comes from a non-kosher animal. Or you say, like the Avnei Nezer, that you, against the Tosefta, that the Techelet that could be used could be from indigo, and then extend it and say once it could be from something kosher, it doesn't actually need to be kosher. Or you say that the only rule of Minamut Raficha are things that are extant, but dyes are not considered extant. They're like chazuta ba'alma, right? They just add color, and that doesn't need to be, that doesn't have the rule of a Minamut Raficha. Or you say that because it's processed, now it becomes kosher even if originally it was not kosher, which obviously has a lot of nafkaminas for kashrut. The last way to defend it is to, as I said before, the post can really debate what parts of the Mishkan and of mitzvot have these rules. And there's at least one suggestion thrown out, but this is problematic, is to say maybe in the end of the day we don't paskin that at least the tapestries need to be made from kosher things because they're only protecting it from rain and stuff like that, and it's external. This is a bit weaker because it depends really on how you understand that. So again, but those are at least some of the defenses in it. Now I thought I would be able to do Techelet and Tolat Shani, but that's just Techelet, okay? That's at least the one that we have dealt with this year, so I figured we should at least cover it. Yeah, Yosef.
I also remember the fourth thing that was just saying maybe you're crazy, which honestly isn't really that major.